Dr. Zexai adjusted his thermal regulation suit for the third time, the advanced Caridian technology humming softly as it maintained his body temperature at the optimal 47 degrees Celsius. The research station on Glacialis 7 was considered a marvel of engineering, capable of housing multiple species in comfort, despite the planet's brutal 109 degrees C surface temperature. Yet even with all their technology, most galactic species could barely survive here for more than a few standard hours. Impossible, Zexai muttered, reviewing his latest research data on the holographic display. His 6 eyes focused intently on the biological profiles floating before him. These readings must be incorrect. For the past 3 cycles, he had been studying the newest addition to the Galactic Council, humans. The species had recently made contact, and their initial biological assessments had been underwhelming. Small, fragile creatures with thin skin, no natural fur, and primitive internal heating mechanisms. By all accounts, they should have been one of the most environmentally restricted species in known space. His research paper, soon to be published in the prestigious Journal of Xenobiology, definitively proved that humans could not possibly survive in extreme cold environments without extensive technological assistance. The mathematics were irrefutable, the biological evidence clear. Humans were tropical creatures at best. The laboratory door hissed open, interrupting his thoughts. Commander Veltar, his Nexarian colleague, entered with what appeared to be excitement rippling through his crystalline exoskeleton. "Zexai, you need to see this immediately," Veltar announced, his voice resonating with harmonic urgency. "A human transport has just arrived." "A human transport?" Zexai's eye stalk swiveled in confusion. "That's impossible. The nearest human colony is 17 parsecs away, and they don't possess faster-than-light capabilities yet." "Apparently they do now, and Zexai..." Veltar paused dramatically. "The human aboard is requesting permission to conduct surface operations, without environmental protection." Zexai's research pad clattered to the floor. "Preposterous. They'll die within minutes. The surface temperature alone would..." "That's what makes this interesting," Veltar interrupted. "The human claims to be something called an Arctic explorer, and says he's experienced in what they call extreme cold weather operations." Within the hour, Zexai found himself in the station's main docking bay, surrounded by a collection of curious scientists from various species. The human transport was surprisingly small and primitive-looking, little more than a metal tube with basic propulsion systems. How it had survived the journey through space was beyond his comprehension. The airlock cycled, and out stepped the most peculiar sight Zexai had ever witnessed. The human was tall by their species standards, perhaps 1.9 meters, with weathered skin and piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold secrets of frozen worlds. But what shocked Zexai most was the human's attire, or lack thereof. Instead of the expected full environmental suit, the creature wore only what appeared to be layered fabric clothing, heavy boots, and some kind of fur-lined hood. "Name's Eric Johansson," the human announced, his breath visible in the station's artificially chilled air. "I understand you folks have some questions about human cold weather capabilities." Zexai stepped forward, his suit's translation matrix struggling with the human's accent. "Mr. Johansson, I must insist you don appropriate thermal protection before..." "This is appropriate thermal protection," Eric interrupted with a grin. "Where I come from, this is what we call spring weather gear." "But the mathematics," Zexai protested, pulling up his holographic data. "Your species lacks sufficient subcutaneous fat deposits. Your extremities have inadequate circulation. Your metabolic heat production is insufficient for..." "Doc," Eric said, beginning to remove his outer layer, revealing even lighter clothing beneath. "Has anyone in your math ever actually asked a human what they can do?" Before Zexai could respond, Eric was walking toward the surface access portal. "Mind if I take a look outside? I've been cooped up in that ship for weeks, and I could use some fresh air." The collective gasps from the assembled scientists created a cacophony of harmonic frequencies. Zexai's thermal suit began beeping warnings as his stress levels spiked. "You cannot. The surface temperature is negative 89 degrees. Even our most advanced suits, negative 89 Celsius?" Eric paused, considering. "That's what, about negative 128 Fahrenheit? Chilly, but I've worked in worse." He pulled a strange cloth tube over his head, covering his mouth and nose. "This is a balaclava. Learned to use these when I was 8 years old, dog sledding in northern Alaska." What happened next would be recounted in scientific journals across the galaxy for generations. Eric cycled through the airlock and stepped onto the surface of Glacialis 7, wearing nothing more than what he called winter clothes. The assembled scientists watched through the observation portal as he not only survived, but began what he described as checking the weather. He stood motionless for several minutes, then began moving around, examining ice formations, and at one point actually sat down on a surface that would have instantly flash-frozen most known organic materials. "Fascinating," he called back through the communication system. "This ice formation suggests some interesting wind patterns. Mind if I take some samples?" For the next 2 hours, Eric conducted what he called a basic survey of the area, moving with the casual confidence of someone taking a stroll through a garden, rather than exploring one of the most hostile environments in known space. When he finally returned to the station, he found HFY frantically recalculating his research data. "I don't understand," the alien scientist muttered. "The biological limitation should make this impossible. Your species shouldn't be able to adapt to such extremes." Eric removed his balaclava and smiled. "Doc, I think your problem is that you're trying to figure out what humans can't do instead of finding out what we can do." He gestured toward the surface. "That's not extreme cold where I come from. That's Tuesday in January in northern Canada. But how? Your physiology adapts," Eric finished. "We generate heat through muscle activity. We layer our clothing for insulation. We've learned to work with our environment instead of against it. And most importantly," he grinned, "we're too stubborn to die." HFY stared at his research data, then at the human, then back at his data. Slowly, deliberately, he deleted his entire research paper. "I believe," he said quietly, "I need to start over. From the beginning. With actual humans this time." Eric clapped him on what he assumed was a shoulder. "Now you're thinking like an explorer, Doc." The next morning, HFY began his new research project. Human adaptability. Why mathematical models fail to account for determination, stubbornness, and the phrase "hold my beer." It would become the most cited paper in xenobiological history.